Welcome back. It's 9:10. Today is the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. If you were alive and old enough, you likely remember what you were doing on that day.
Joining us are two members from the Cedar Rapids Fire Department, Fire Chief Greg Smith and my husband, Captain Justin Jensen. Chief Smith, we'll start with you. I'm going to ask, what do you remember about September 11th?
Actually, I was still working on shift that day, or at that time period, and I just remember being at home and turning on the news, and Tower 1 was on fire, and they were speculating as to what was going on and that type of stuff, and I remember calling actually my dad and saying, hey, are you watching the news? And there was some speculation on a plane hitting the tower and this and that, and we were talking that through, and I'm like, I don't think that could have been what happened. And then, as we're on the phone, the second plane, of course, comes in the second tower, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. What's going on? And then it was just obviously you're just gathering yourself and just kind of what's going on. Nation's under attack, the biggest city in the country, and obviously right at the time that everybody's arriving to work. So just the somberness and just, then it was glued to the TV the rest of the day.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, Justin, same question for you, too.
So, like Chief, I was going about my day, checking boxes, getting things done, but as the day wound down, you're saying that somewhat feeling of violation and what was going on and everything else. So, you try to do the mundane things, keep going forward, but at the same time, you're feeling this emotional roller coaster throughout the day.
Well, and we bring you guys on not only because of the fire aspect, but you, sir, went to New York shortly after the attacks. Talk a little bit about that.
Certainly did. We actually had a New York connection. One of my fellow co-workers, Chief Rick Halloran, he has a cousin that worked in FDNY, firefighter. He was a chauffeur, drove a ladder truck, and so we put this trip together. And from the get-go, we were banking in to land in LaGuardia, and you look off to the window of the airplane, and there you see the iconic skyline, but then you also see the smoldering fires of where the Twin Towers were located. So it hit right away emotionally. You were already there.
From a firefighter's perspective, I mean, you guys probably look at something like this differently than what Chris or I would. Kind of talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to bring the interview up because a lot of changes have happened in Cedar Rapids 22 years as well, too.
True. From my perspective, just the vast amount of carnage that it caused, and how you would be easily just past your means of resources. New York City Fire Department's a huge agency, but they were still well behind the eight ball and the curveball that they were thrown for that incident, and just the heroics that you hear about continually. I have to feel that those ladies and gentlemen that were working that day and were going up to the top of those towers, you had to, in the back of your mind, know that was probably a one-way trip, and just how heroic that was.
Yeah, and I just to echo that is, it's we've thankfully not had a terrorist attack here or anything of that magnitude, but of course, you have the floods, you have the derecho and this type of stuff we went through, and you just go to work and you're setting towards your mission. Our priorities are always life safety, instant stabilization, then property conservation. So, those men and women were certainly going up there thinking life safety number one. How can we evacuate as many people as possible? And you're just focused on the mission.
Right.
It's the fire service is great because you're always with the crew, and so you're going together and you're making those decisions together. I mean, there's a plan of attack, but you always divert from that in any emergency because once you get there, things approach differently. So.
Well, we want to take a different approach to this. Not only are we remembering 9/11, you mentioned the derecho, you mentioned the flood. There's a lot of changes here locally that have come out of that, Chris.
Yes, there are. And we just spent some time down at Central, which I'm down there all the time. I know, I kind of take it for granted, but we really got to look around a lot last week. And there is our Miss Catherine right now trying on some of these. Say it again, it's called?
Turnout gear.
Turnout gear?
Our personal protective equipment, our PPE.
Okay, that's sad that I don't know what that's called.
No,
I'm sorry.
He's the firefighter.
I know, but I apparently don't listen to him as much as I think I do. So tell us, Can people take tours of Central, or how do they have open houses? How does that work?
Right
Yeah.
now, of course, with COVID, we
Right.
shut down the building and isolated it through the pandemic and whatnot. And so, in coming out of that, we evaluated it, and we used to give tours routinely.
Right.
We'll give very sporadic tours now, but typically what we do now is an open house once per year. And the reason for that is just our run numbers and our incidents just increase year after year after year.
Sure.
And we also make these guys do a lot of training and to keep them sharp and focused. So we just figured what's the priority here,
Right.
and making sure that they have obviously the time to respond to incidents and also the time to train. We do pre-plans on every commercial building in the city, and so just make sure they have those times. Then we just try to schedule the special times like the open
Right.
houses and whatnot for
Right.
for the public to come in and see the facility.
Well, gentlemen, we thank you so much for
do.
being not only
Yeah.
with us today on 9/11, but our first official
first guest.
non-coworker guests as we do a real episode of Everyday Iowa. Thank you guys, and to the men and
Thanks for
women
having
who
us.
put in the
Appreciate it.
long hours helping us
Yes,
out.
thank you.
Thank you.